Welcome teachers and staff to the 2022-2023 North Carolina Teacher Orientation. This training is a required training for all staff members every year. If you are new to Ridge Road Middle School or to CMS, this will be really important information. And if you are returning to Ridge Road or CMS, again, this is important information, but information that you have already heard. We are required to give you this training every year. This year, we'll be doing it on Zoom, so that way you can watch it on your own time. So as I go through today's training on the North Carolina Teacher Orientation evaluation training, afterwards, if you have any questions, you can always feel free to stop by to see me or your grade level administrator, and we can definitely help you out. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So the goals today is that we're going to talk about the purpose of NESYS, which stands for North Carolina Education Evaluation System. And again, this is the system that we use to evaluate all employees in CMS. We'll talk about orientation requirements, evaluation process, completing the multi-purpose rubric, as well as supporting resources, and then as well as signing off in My Talent. After today's training, after you get done watching the video, you will need to go into My Talent, and under your My Evaluation, there should be a first link on the very top that talks about training orientation. You click on that, you put the date that you watched this video, and then you mark complete. You should have a green arrow or green check mark, I should say, on the left-hand side, and that will mean that you are good to go. I will also provide you with a letter that will be in your mailbox. In this letter, it'll talk about your licensure ID, your number. It'll also tell you what evaluation plan you are, if you're comprehensive, if you're standard, if you're abbreviated. It'll also tell you if you need a beginning teacher and that you fall in the beginning teacher support program, and that you would require a mentor. So all that information will be on that letter. But also on the very bottom of it, there is a place that you will sign off once you have completed the green check mark in My Talent for orientation training. So please make sure that is completed. I believe the due date for that is Friday, August 26th. So again, once you've completed watching this entire video, go ahead and knock that out in My Talent. And then once you have the green arrow, you can sign off on that paper. All papers returned to Mr. Higgins, myself. You can please feel free to put it in my mailbox, and then you will be set, ready to go. So thank you again for your time. Again, a little bit about the educator evaluation is for growth and improvement. That's obviously what we strive for every year, including myself. The purpose of this is to assess the teacher's performance in relation to the North Carolina professional teaching standards and design a plan for professional growth. I won't go a little bit more into detail today. So here is a great resource for you to use as we talk about the evaluation process. You can see on here there are 4 steps in the middle, and in each step there are 2 different components. So step 1 is training and orientation. Step 2 is self-assessments and pre-conference. Step 3 is the actual observation cycle. And then step 4 is the summative evaluation and goal setting. So again, we will go through all of those with you today, the entire evaluation process. And as I mentioned before, if you are returning to Ridge Road or CMS, there's not much has changed in this area. All right, so first we'll talk about component 1 in the first step, which is the training. So this is what you're doing, your knockout number 1. So after you completed this video, as I mentioned before, you will then knock out the orientation in My Talent. But this right now is the training that everyone is required to do. And then as I mentioned, the orientation that will be done in My Talent. You click on the My Evaluation, it's right there in the very top. You click on it, you put the date, you mark complete, and then you should have a green check mark. So please make sure that that is completed by no later than Friday, August 26th. It's important, as you see, that needs to be within the first 10 days or 2 weeks. But our goal here at Ridge Road is to make sure that one thing we can check off the list is that it's done by August 26th. And then if we move on to step 2, the self-assessment and goal setting pre-conferences. Every year, teachers will need to do a self-assessment, and that's just an opportunity to use the rubric for the evaluation of North Carolina teachers, and you go ahead and rate yourself on each of the 5 standards and each of the elements in each of the 5 standards. That goes from developing, proficient, accomplished, distinguished to not demonstrated. So you will have an opportunity to do that beforehand. If you look at the next slide, here's kind of an example of what it looks like. So if I was a teacher and I was completing this, and let's say for standard element 1A, I felt like I was distinguished, encouraged the students to take responsibility for their own learning, and I felt like I was distinguished. Well, if I'm going to click this box, then that means all the 3 other boxes in accomplished, proficient, and developing also need to be clicked. I can't just pick the one that I feel like I landed on it. All the previous ones need to be selected as well. If that's not the case, then you won't actually be able to complete your self-assessment. You won't get that green check mark. So again, you can see here that all 3 of these have not been chosen, as well as this accomplished one, and that all the previous ones need to be clicked. You also notice that when we do our formal observation, that's the same thing as well. The administrator that does your observation, no matter where you're ended up on, all the previous ones will be clicked as well. So again, for your self-assessment, please make sure you do that for each of the elements in all 5 standards. All right, pre-conference. So depending on your what evaluation cycle you're on, if you're comprehensive or if you're standard, you will be required to do a pre-conference for your first formal observation. So what that means is that you will meet with the administrator before you have your first observation. You will go over what you'll be expecting in the classroom. You talk a little bit about what you'll be teaching, kind of get more information on what to expect from the teacher. That's your opportunity to provide that to the administrator. And we'll also time to go over your PDP, which also we talk a little bit about in just a minute, as well as your self-assessment. So these are all opportunities for you to discuss that before your first observation. And your first round observation is typically announced, so you'll get to pick the day and time as well. And that will be all set during your pre-conference. I also provided here some of the questions we've used in our pre-conferences. Obviously, information will be shared prior to you meeting with the administrator, but these are some typical questions. I can let you guys kind of look at it on your own, but these are some questions that you may be asked to fill out prior to the meeting, or questions that we will talk about during our pre-conference. All right, step number 3 is the observation cycle. So as I mentioned, there's really 3 different ones. There's the formal observation, comprehensive observation cycle, and then there's also the standard, and then also abbreviated. So anyone 3 years or under will be in a comprehensive. That means you get 3 formal, either by the principal or assistant principal or dean of students, and then you also get 1 formal through a peer observation. Those peer observations are typically done in January or February. So again, if you have 3 years or less, you'll be comprehensive and you'll be receiving 3 formals and 1 peer. If you have more than 3 years of experience, you may be on a standard, which means that you get a renewal year. If that's the case, again, you'll have the same cycle of 3 formal observations, but you will not have a peer observation. If you're abbreviated observation, you will get 2 observations and they will be shortened. You can see up here for a comprehensive and for standards, 45 minutes long. And then for abbreviated, it is about 25 minutes long. So again, that information will be shared with you in the letter that will be in your mailbox that you will sign off once you have completed the orientation training in MyTalent. So again, that's good information to have. All right, so understanding the element, context, and rating level. So again, there are 5 different standards, and each standard is different elements, okay? And that resource will also be provided to you as well. And we'll talk about that, that you can dive in a little bit more. But for today's training purposes, we're going to look at element 4A, okay? That means standard 4 element A, and it talks about the description of what is in that evaluation. But really kind of what I want to talk about is, you know, if you are someone that is marked developing, that means that you have just the initial knowledge of it. Right? You know what it's supposed to be. You know you can do it, right? Or you do know it. Proficient, meaning now we're taking what we do know and we're putting it more into action. So you can actually show it in your classroom. And then if you're good to get to be accomplished, that's more of the interaction. That's more of the student focus. The students are taking over, is visible in the actions of your students. And then obviously, if you're going to get to be distinguished, that's an extension of it. And that's visible beyond the instructional space of your classroom. So how you're making that impact in the school or in CMS or whatever it may be. So I like this, that kind of breaks it down of what it means to be developing, proficient, accomplished, and distinguished. Not demonstrated, meaning basically was no evidence, we didn't see it, or we're not actually looking for it. But that kind of breaks down the different ratings. I also want to mention too, after each of the standard, your administrator will also provide feedback for each of the 5 standards as well. So here is the North Carolina Educator Evaluation System evaluation process requirements. And this slide is good because it breaks it down to what exactly you need to have for each of the different components. So let's say that comprehensive, that means again that you are in the first 3 years of experience. You will need a self-assessment. You'll need a professional development plan. If you actually look vertically, you can see that everyone, either if it's standard, abbreviated, if you're a late hire, or if you are speech language pathologist, occupational therapist, or physical therapist, you would also have the self-assessment and the PDP plan. So everyone has these 2. As I mentioned before in the pre-conference, comprehensive and standards, the ones who are getting 3 formal observations, you will have a pre-conference, and that would only be for your first one. You can see right here, abbreviated is not required. Obviously, if you're a late hire, for any teachers that are late hires, they will get a pre-conference as well. But you can take a look at this a little bit more and kind of really pinpoint on exactly what you need to have before the end of the year. So it's a good resource to have. Here's the CMS minimum performance expectations. And again, this is not Ridge Road expectation. This is CMS expectation. So if you look here, if I was a first year teacher, and this is ratings based off my summary or my summative at the end of the year. So you can see that for me to have what is expected by CMS and meet the requirements for my rating, I have to be rated developing or above in each of the standards, which we talked about 5 standards, and rated at least proficient or above in at least one of the standards. And again, that's not for your first or second or third observation, that is for your summative. So that's the requirements for your first year, and it goes into second year, third year, year 1 with CMS, year 2 or more with CMS, and then all the teachers with 4+ years CMS. It talks about what is expected by the end of the year. So again, this is another great resource to check out. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to me or any of your grade level administrator. We can definitely help you with this. But all right, so when we look at observations, you know, let's say that you are abbreviated, or let's say that you're comprehensive, right? And you get a first observation. Well, obviously, we're going to use that 45 minutes that we're in your classroom to help with that evaluation. But we're also going to look at other things. We're going to look at walkthrough data. We're going to look at, you know, how you contribute in PLC, a leader in the school. So there's all of these different feedback or opportunities that we're going to take before we actually do your evaluation. So it's just not one piece. We're looking at a whole different things that you may have done throughout the school year to help with your observation. And obviously throughout the ways you can see that you will be getting feedback throughout it as well. That way, hopefully you will continue to grow professionally. All right, so component 6, the post-conference. So once we've, let's say again, comprehensive, once we did your pre-conference, we set a date, come in and do your observation for 45 minutes. Then I will go back and rate you on each of the 5 standards. I will provide feedback, areas of growth, areas of opportunity for each standard. And then I would share that in My Talent. You would get a message, probably an email from the administrator letting you know that it's now able to view it in My Talent. You can click on your Formal 1 observation. It will be all right there with you. We'll share it with you so you can be able to look at the ratings as well as the comments. And then typically after we share it with you within 24, 48 hours, we will hold a post-conference. And during that time, we'll talk about feedback, we'll talk about next steps, but also an opportunity for you to share any artifacts or evidence that maybe the administrator missed or missed on your ratings or your comments that you would like to provide. So that's an important time too, again, to talk about some things that may have not captured during the observation. So again, strengths and weaknesses of the rubric. That will be time for your post-conference. You obviously will sign off on it, looking for a green check mark, and we can go through that as you have your post-conferences as well. Again, I add this post-conference summative evaluation questions. Again, you can kind of look through it as you want. I know right now it's hard to see, but here are some things that we can definitely talk about during your post-conference, just to help make sure that we are providing growth opportunities and really digging into what we noticed during your observation. So the 7th component, or the step 4, 7th component, is the summary evaluation. Again, that is towards the end of the school year, depending on if you're comprehensive or standard abbreviated. It may be April, maybe May. When you have that, but that more information will be shared out later. And again, that is your overall rating for the end of the year. And that's, as I mentioned, but the minimum expectations, that's what this is based off of. So again, that will be at the end of the year as well. Throughout the process, you will have a professional development plan. This year, we are, similar to previous years, have provided PDP plans for you to use. That way we're all aligned and focusing more towards our school improvement goals. So check that out. It's also in the staff handbook that I'm sure that will be mentioned and brought up to you later. But there are goals that basically you can just copy and paste and put it into your PDP plan if you wish. That's again also aligned to our school improvement goals. And then here is the teacher evaluation process. I am not going to print it out for everyone, but I am going to download it into the My Talent folder shared in the Ridge-Road Middle School shared drive. There will be some other resources there as well for you to look at. So if you want to look at a little bit more than this short training that I provided, you can feel free to do so as well. But overall, that is the North Carolina teacher evaluation process. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Ms. West or Ms. Timblin. We can definitely help you. But again, once you are finished with this, you need to please go into My Talent, sign off on your orientation training, step 2 on this evaluation process, and make sure that you put the date that you watched this video, and then also that you've marked complete and you have a green check mark next to it. And once you're finished with that, you can sign the letter on the bottom of it and put it in Mr. Higgins' box. That way that I know that you are signed off, ready to go, and then you should be good to go. I appreciate your time. Again, let me know if you have any questions, and I hope everyone has a great day.